I bring not a happy story to us today. Flying pickup trucks is not a happy story, and yet it's a story that occurred just a few miles away from me. Curly was right across the river from Argosville, where I was pastor for 5 years, and where I was pastor when this occurred. Everybody in the congregation knew people over in Curly. It's a town of about 120. After that, about 118. And that includes all the houses out into the rural area of the city limits. That's the gate for their cemetery right there. And after this accident, it was missing one father and one daughter. And I can add that it was a Sunday night. They were driving home from church. They had been to church that morning. They had been to church all night. And after church that night, they practiced in the choir, and now we're coming home at about 11 o'clock. When, while driving north at the correct speed, inside of their own lane, with their seatbelts on, their lives were instantly removed by a pickup truck flying at them in the night. And I find it disturbing, to say the least. I mean, how do you protect yourself from pickup trucks flying in the night? You can't really say, well, I need to be especially careful tonight. There might be a pickup truck flying out of the sky at me. It just doesn't work. Now you could say, maybe I should drive a tank. Some people do that. They call them Hummers, and they bought a lot of them when they didn't mind how much the gas cost. But another group gets kind of paranoid and just stays home. Well, if you're going to live the life God gave you, how do you stay home? It just doesn't work out all that well. There are flying pickup trucks at home too, by the way. You want to hide in your basement? Well, that radon gas will emanate up through the soil, through the walls, and get you there too. Now, I unconsciously have employed several other tactics to stay alive and to live a long life. I try to be reasonably healthy, so I'm not at any great risk of dying. This bald spot is conveniently only growing in the back, so when I look in the mirror, I can still say, oh my God. I'll keep my youth, and I'm at no risk of dying. But you know what? All of that becomes mocked by flying pickup trucks at night. Because even if the father was a little younger than me, but the daughter was certainly younger and healthier than I was, and they're dead. So those strategies apparently don't work so good. Being young and strong won't keep you alive. I use my seatbelt. I try to concentrate when I drive. Does that make me at less risk of dying? Unfortunately, this evidence says no. They were driving without fault when they were killed. And I really want to believe that somehow God is interested in how we live, and I do still believe that. God is interested in how we live. But when I try to stretch that and say, well, because I'm a nice guy, God is writing an extra insurance policy for me. Flying pickup trucks that take out fathers and daughters who've been to church twice and have been practicing in the night, take that away from me. It takes it away from all of us. I want to be somebody who dies as a very old man in his sleep, but flying pickup trucks take that away from me. I can't even somehow console myself that those people who waste their lives things that result in harm to others, well, they get theirs in the end. What this guy got was treated and released. And no, that wasn't the end of it for him. But he's alive today, contrary to the Pharaohs who are not. So all of my notions about what is right and what is fair take a terrible beating in this one accident. Now we all have notions of what is right and what is fair and who it should happen to. And all those things have taken beatings in every life in this room. I'm not complaining about anything that's a news flash to any of you. You have all known good people that have died young. You have all known scoundrels that have died in their sleep as very old people. You have all known tragedies. I didn't grow up in the church. I kind of went back to it. I was in it up to my eyeballs till I was 9. And then my father, after a pretty harsh falling out, said he had to stay home and keep his faith safe from the church. He would have liked us, by the way. He kind of had this, the great falling out was an argument with his pastor over whether the world was created in 6 24-hour periods or not. We wouldn't have tested him that way here. But he was tested that way in his church, the church I was in until I was 9. All of these things we experience in our world address whether or not we believe. And if we do, in what or who. Flying pickup trucks, or the equivalent of flying pickup trucks, tempt me to believe in nothing, tempt me to be nothing, tempt me to do nothing. What's the point? What's the point of a good life when a father and daughter on their way home from church can get snuffed out like that by a pickup truck falling from the sky onto their vehicle? We always have a temptation to despair. The ever-present temptation is there because there are an ever-present supply of flying pickup trucks. Kids sometimes die getting off school buses. Shelby would have had a little brother named David if he hadn't gotten off a school bus at just the wrong moment. Crossed around in front, only to be cut down by a driver who ran around him. I was out, you might recall, I suggested that people visit some graveyards during Memorial Day. I do that from time to time. Here are 2 stones immediately adjacent to each other. Donna Marie Taven and Gina Winfred Taven. 84 years of life between them. I don't know what took either. But you see something like that and you go, why? Just a little ways away from these 2 stones, there's 7 children in a row, all with the same name. Within 2 or 3 days of each other, all of them. Cholera took them. It was 1911, but cholera. And there are lots of flying pickup trucks, and none of them are safe. No place is safe. We can't hide. We're all going to die, and when we do, it's not going to be just, and it's not going to be fair. And I'm not telling anything so that we can ask ourselves the next question. Okay, we already know we're all going to die. We already have a precedent that it's not going to be just or fair when it comes about. What are we going to believe if that's the case? What are we going to do? I wanted to get to the bottom of this nice deep hole. Nobody's safe. It's not going to be just and fair. We're all going to die, so that we can take a good look at the hole. What the floor looks like, what the walls look like, because I don't want to go in this hole. I don't want to live in this hole, and having given careful examination to this hole, let us see about moving out of this hole. On the way out, it'd be good for us to take a quick inventory of the congregation. Is anyone in the room dead? Nobody here dead? That's good, because if we aren't dead, we have options. And options are good when you're in a hole. We have the temptation to believe in nothing. Flying pickup trucks tell us that there is chaos, but there are all sorts of reminders, written large and small, that there is order in the world as well. This is one of the large written reminders that there is order. There is winter, followed by spring, followed by summer, followed by fall. And even in a year with weather as screwed up as this year, there has been something of a winter, and something of a spring, and something of a summer that is upon us. There is some order in the chaos. We plant seeds in the ground. Why? Well, because we expect it to rain eventually. And I'm glad it finally has a little bit today, and may it do more. But we put those seeds in the ground expecting a yield, expecting a harvest, expecting a sale, expecting a processing, expecting a meal to be served out of it. And yes, there are flying pickup trucks in the world, but we're still going to plant seeds and expect it to rain and ultimately turn into food. And then there is our Bibles. Our Bible is a written record of the experiences people have had with God for thousands of years, and that tends to point out to us that there is order in this vast chaos. There are flying pickup trucks, but there are also saviors that enter into the world and change the entire dynamics of everything. Now, we can look at the flying pickup trucks and believe in nothing, or we can latch on to the things that show that order still exists in the world. We can hold on to the stories, the witness of believers past, and say the touch of our God is not that far off. It is possible. It is possible that God knows what it's like for us to suffer flying pickup trucks, because God was born here once. Probably the coolest thing I think about the nativity is that it means that God tried my shoes on. And that is such a comfort. The author of Hebrews reminds us that we don't have one who doesn't understand our sufferings. We have one who has been here, gotten too hot on a sunny day, gotten too cold on a winter's day. Back in World War II, Mrs. Eisenhower wrote to her husband about the soldiers she knew that she had spoken to. And she related to him, you know, this young man, he's afraid that his life is going to be thrown away in war. And Eisenhower was able to write back to her, I went to boot camp too. I was once just a soldier. And I too know what it's like to have such fears. And we know what it is like to have such fears. When the doctor says it's cancer, when there is someone you don't know asking if you're the parent of so-and-so, and they identify themselves as the highway patrol. There is need to bear away from fear. We live in a world where others hate each other enough to kill each other. It's like being in a nightmare. And even when somebody is kind enough to rattle you awake in the middle of your nightmare, do you look around and go, oh, the world's a perfect place? I'm not like that. It takes me a couple of minutes. Sometimes I just plain get up and go read a book and come back to bed an hour later after I have shaken off the shadow of the night. God comes to us, not just in Jesus 2,000 years ago, but something that we don't focus on very heavily in our administration of the sacraments is the sense that God is present in us. I'm not going to say that the piece of bread will bleed, as in doctrines of some church, but I will say that when Jesus said, "This is my body, this is my blood," that God is with us. God is among us. We receive and touch God in this thing that is holy. And that's important. Some of us think God is an undertaker. We get through this whole life without God. And then they throw the dirt on top of the box, and somehow or another we wake up and meet God for the first time. And if that's our notion of things, I would like to suggest to you a different picture. How about a God you talk to every morning and every night? How about a God that you invite to have meals with you? How about a God who touches you in a holy way each time you receive communion? How about a God that helps to sort out our fears of flying pickup trucks every day? God is with us in the world. Tragedy, flying pickups, attempting to believe in nothing, but I'm going to believe, because even though I can clearly perceive chaos, I can likewise clearly perceive God in this world. It's the tipping point for us. Tragedy says believe in nothing. Nobody's safe. We're all going to die. It's not just fair. It never will be. Why do anything? Because we did the inventory. We checked the most important thing. Are we dead yet? And we're not. So let us believe instead. Until we aren't in, let's embrace the lives that we have. Let us not just mope around and be angry, because that life is impermanent. We could hide. I love this guy. Half-naked Batman mask, dodging life's bullets. I'd rather be him than the one in the hazmat suit. We have options. And here are some. We can stand for peace even though there is terrorism in the world. We can be advocates for improvements in medicine even though healthcare costs too much. We can be people who remove poisons and pollutions from our world even though there's piles of junk out there. Or we can be nothing, bide our time and wait to die. The world isn't just and fair. We could despair of justice and equity. We could also say, you know what? We're going to do the things that make things more fair. We're going to do what we can instead of being overwhelmed by the fact that CEOs make 200 and 400 times the wage of their earners. We can step in wherever we have the opportunity and say, you know what, I don't think so. And we might not have a lot of opportunities for that, but are we using the ones we do have? Do we get those stock voting certificates in the mail and do nothing with them? Or do we figure out who might actually say, you know what, the company's profits don't have to go to this idiot making $12 million, even though the company lost a fourth of its net worth last year? We can be opponents of crime, addiction, and abuse. Or we could just say, you know, that's always going on. We can be supporters of our government and our courts and our legislatures, rather than just say, throw all the bums out. We can be people who don't listen when we hear of inhumanity, or we can be people who do listen when we hear of inhumanity. We can be the ones who step up to help others when this crazy weather overwhelms others. And by the way, we are those people now. We are already choosing to be those people now. Our per capita giving to OCWM is the greatest in our association. And when the disaster happens and all those blankets are getting turned out for free, we don't send our own disaster people there, but we send our stuff through the Red Cross to these disastrous occurrences. Sadly enough, it's churches, not ours, thank God. But do we remember the reasons that New Orleans supposedly went underwater, according to one great churchman? Great quotes. Come on. No memory? Ellen DeGeneres was there. That's why New Orleans was destroyed by hurricane, according to Pat Robertson. We can at the very least be churchmen who censure other churchmen who say stupid things like that. And all of this, we can get angry and crawl inside of ourselves, or we can do more constructive things. I gave you some general constructive things a minute ago. If you want, if you're quick with a pencil, here are some stuff that I try to keep on my own radar, things to do. I can go to church. Oh, you're already on board. Great. Because this is one of the best places there is to ward off despair from a world that isn't just and isn't fair. I can tell my wife I love her. Because you know what? She's in the same scary, not just and not fair world that I'm in, and she is just as likely to become afraid living here as I am. And nothing takes the sting out of fear quite like knowing you're loved. Or you can get on the phone, you can get in the car, you can tell your kids, your grandkids, your parents, or maybe just your good friends that you love them. And you don't want them to be afraid or alone in this world either. You can, and this is a stretch, but try it, it gets easier. and fair government of all the unjust and unfair governments that dot this whole planet. And you can vote for the same reason. You can recycle. I know. The dump is huge. They say there's plenty of room. But that doesn't mean you don't have to be a decent steward of a place. It took me a while to find the recycling opportunities in this town. They hide them well. But just a half a mile from here, up this road and about 3 blocks to the left, there are recycling bins for all the things that you might want to recycle. Then there's doing something nice for other people. One of the tough things about taking my first call up in Grand Forks meant that for the very first time in my life, I wouldn't be there to shovel the snow out of Dad's driveway. Dad had polio in '52, walked with crutches, was told he would never walk again. He certainly wasn't going to shovel snow, and he certainly wasn't going to shovel the heavy junk that the plows put in the driveway, and we lived in Minnesota. Many a time up where I was, I would take that huge snow blower that Dad had no use for. I took it with me, and I'd do the whole block. And as I did it, I would say a little prayer, and somebody would dig that out. For the 4 years beyond when I moved out and when Dad moved to Arizona, somebody did. It would be one of you, because I wasn't there. It was somebody else. And that goes for cookies. One of the hardest guys I ever knew in one of my earlier calls. I mean, he just never seemed to have much kindness. He came, turned up at a prayer service. An old woman had passed. And he wanted to say something, but he could hardly spit it out. But what he finally said was, after his mother died, every day he would walk home from school, past the house of the woman in the casket. And she would signal him to come in. And every day there would be a pot of hot grease on the stove. Fresh donut batter, ready to be poured into it. And on his way home, he had that bit of kindness. Now, yeah, he turned out to be a pretty rocky guy in the end anyway, but from that day on, I and anybody who saw him that night knew there was a soft, donutty guy inside of him. And it changed things. It changed things. We can get out our pen and actually write a congressman or a senator. I know. We swear that they don't care. But you know what? They care a lot more about these letters than you might think. You can help them, encourage them, make the world that more just and more fair place, rather than despairing of it all. And you might even try making a peace with someone with whom you have had peace. Let us not be broken by the flying pickup trucks. They may get us eventually, but they didn't get us yet. Because we checked, and everybody in here isn't dead. So we have our options. We can be good people. We can choose to do good things. We can either wear the despair that flying pickup trucks would clothe us in, or we can shake the despair away and be the children of God that we are called to. Amen. As a matter of fact, let's close out with prayer. Our Lord Jesus, it is said that in Gethsemane, knowing that you were about to collide with the cross, you prayed earnestly that the cup might be taken away. Nevertheless, you stood the course. Let us be encouraged by your example. Give your Spirit to us, that we may choose not to be afraid, but to hold to the course. That we may choose not to desert this world, but that we may carry and endure our cross. And be the children of our God. For this we pray. Thine own dear